Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Dirt and the Divine. This is the podcast where we say what wants to be said. Welcome to this episode. I am so excited to have my friend Diana Lockett here with us today. Hi, Diana. How are you?
I'm amazing. How are you?
I'm amazing. I'm amazing. So just before we hopped on here, we did a little bit of breath work together and we grounded in and we connected even over the Zoom in order to be able to be grounded and super present with each other. So I love that we did that. And what I would love to do now is just open up the floor to have you share your really powerful story with the listeners and the people who are watching, and then we'll just go from there. So the
Okay.
floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, Krisha. I'm loving what you're bringing into the world. And I really appreciate that opportunity for us to do our tune in together
Yeah.
to create a resonant field where I could really feel myself in your presence. So thank you for that.
Yeah, same here. Because it's all about the energy, right? There is no
Yeah.
separation anyway. And I think like
Mm-mm.
this is such a great thing that all humans should be doing is checking in
Mm-hmm.
at an energetic level, not just that the physical eyes and touch and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
Mhm.
So, where do I start? My story, is not unlike many of your listeners in that my story has been sprinkled with shame and abuse and neglect and doubt and fear and all those pieces. And I kind of grew up thinking that was the normal. Like I didn't know there was anything wrong with getting hit with a strap or yelled at, or the fear that I had around my father. I didn't know that was wrong.
Right.
And I took it in. And what I learned really, really young, a really good thing that I learned was how to numb my feelings so that I could survive. And we have this incredible survival mechanism that allows us to be able to get up every day and move forward in our lives. And mine was super active, which means that I was in a state of fight or flight probably for most of my childhood and didn't really know it. And then I realized when I was 17, I had a situation where I was sexually assaulted and by a photographer. And I had such poor boundaries and such poor abilities to communicate and use my voice and say no. And I tell my clients, no is a complete sentence. I didn't have that capacity. My voice had been diminished. I was an exuberant child. I was outgoing. I loved to sing. I loved to dance. I loved to talk, and I still do.
Mm.
But at one point, all of that got turned down in my life. And so when that situation happened, not only did I say nothing, I walked out and said, thank you. And I get like goosebumps when I think about it now because I was so horribly violated and I didn't know what to do. And I took that on, and the way that I describe it, and I'm doing a speech in a couple of weeks for Speaker Slam. So for those of you who don't know Speaker Slam, check it out. They do amazing speaking shows or opportunities or contests for new speakers to come forward or people to come forward with a message. And my speech at that event, which is going to air the week of Valentine's Day, is about how I was placed in a prison of shame through my life. Shame for my body, shame for my feelings, shame for my voice. And in doing so, it really diminished my light, my truth, my trust, my capacity to acknowledge my worth, to come forward and trust what I was going to do in the world and trust myself in relationships. So I gave away my power a lot in relationships
Yeah.
because of that. And then in around the time that I'm in my mid 50s now, and when I was in my early 30s, I realized that I had this nagging something missing in my life. And like to put it into context, I had an amazing career. And I was and still practice a little bit as a speech language pathologist, amazing career. I had a beautiful home. I had a lovely daughter. I had a husband who I know now we didn't really love each other, but we were friends. And all of a sudden, I woke up and I realized something was missing in my life. I had this nagging feeling. But in order to go there, I had to go back. And I had to go back and do some pretty deep healing and really look at my wounds and acknowledge them and create a space to be able to hold them and reparent them. The problem was I had in my mind that this journey of healing was limited by time, and I had exactly 3 months to do it. So I remember first going to a counselor, like a psychotherapist, and it was a kind of a creepy situation because we sat on her couch in her room and we chatted the first session. And the second session I came back, and each time I'm retelling my story. And every time I'm retelling my story, I'm re-traumatizing. I'm reliving my trauma, my
Yeah.
shame. I'm
Yeah.
getting those feelings and I don't know what to do with them.
Right.
And the second time I saw her, I was walking out her door and I stopped and I froze because on her console table by her front door was a big picture of a woman who looked exactly like me.
Mm.
Now,
Mm.
I have a twin. This woman looked more like my twin than my twin does.
Wow.
It was her
Okay.
daughter. And that really creeped me out.
Yeah.
But I went back for a third session. I thought, okay, there's something here. I'm meant to be here. But in that third session, I said to her, how long are we going to be needing to do this work together? And she said, oh, probably 10 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
I never went back because
Yeah.
I thought, I don't have 10 years of my life to waste. I saw this as a wasteful time. So I started doing energy work, became trained in doing energy work, started experimenting with yoga, meditation. I used meditation to escape my life.
Mm.
So we can use meditation to awaken,
Yeah.
or we can use meditation to go to
Okay.
sleep.
Yep.
Literally, sometimes I do that at night if I'm up.
Hmm.
I used it to really go to sleep and avoid my life, which meant avoiding my then husband. I would meditate for 2 or 3 hours a day
Right. Ooh, yeah.
because then I didn't have to be in relationship with him.
Right, right, right. And that's, I just want to make a comment on that, and then I want you to just continue obviously with your story.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting because we often think of coping mechanisms or escape tools or whatever as things like drugs, alcohol, sex, work, like those toxic things, right? And so
Mhm.
I love that you brought up something so pure and healthy, right? As also a sabotage tool or an avoidance tool, right? In the same way that, maybe excessive exercise or excessive nutrition or whatever can also be, right? So it's the intention and why you're like, are you escaping using even these seemingly healthy tools?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Even then I knew I was escaping. Even
yeah.
then I
Oh
had
yeah.
enough wisdom to know that I
You
was
had enough
escaping.
awareness. You knew.
And
But what else were you gonna do at that time, right?
yeah,
So we are
I
where we
wasn't
are when
ready to
we're
leave.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do believe that when we can choose consciously or we can choose unconsciously what our numbing devices are.
Yeah.
And I have a strategy that I talk about 4 ways of showing up in the world.
Mhm.
Many and most people are going to be unconscious, and that's where they're living in a
Yeah.
victim state.
Yeah.
And then people go to conscious unconscious where they catch themselves, but it's a little bit late, right? I yelled, I really didn't
Yeah.
mean that didn't make me feel good, it
Yeah.
doesn't make our relationship healthier,
Yeah.
or I ate that awful food and now I feel terrible. That's the conscious unconscious.
Yeah.
And I was at the phase where I was moving into conscious conscious, which is where I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I had an experience one day on my meditation cushion where I turned off the music. I'm not sure I've ever shared this story, so I'm obviously meant to have
Mhm.
saved it for you because I don't think it's ever been shared.
Wow. Okay.
I was sitting on my meditation cushion and I had developed some very strong spiritual practices and beliefs, but I was nowhere near connected to religion.
Yep.
And on my meditation cushion, my guided meditation turned off. It ended, and I just heard this voice, this wisdom inside me say, "Stay here, stay here, stay
Mhm.
here." So I
Mhm.
did.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I don't know if my eyes were opened or not, but in front of me, as clear as my hand is in front of me here, was the presence of Jesus. Now,
Mm.
remember, I'm not a religious person.
Right.
I literally fell back and said, "Why are you here?"
Right. Ooh, yeah.
And he said, "To remind you of what's
Mhm.
inside you." I said,
Yeah.
"What do you mean?" He says, "You
Mhm.
have courage." I said, "I don't feel it." I felt so stuck in my life. I knew I needed to leave this relationship. And the consequences of leaving that relationship to me felt so horrible that I couldn't take that step.
Yep.
And the message I got is, "You have courage and it's inside you." And so I took that courage, I literally like channeled it into action.
Yeah.
told my husband the next day I was leaving, because we had talked about it. It's not like it was news. I had asked him to leave, but he
Right.
wouldn't. Found a place 3 days later, moved out within a week
Yeah.
with my daughter. So this was a massive opportunity for me to really start learning to trust in my own inner wisdom. And whatever that was, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it looked like Jesus.
Right.
So I don't
And
know.
Jesus like was just incarnate of Christ consciousness, right?
Yes,
Like he was
yes,
just a human who was awakened and
yes,
evolved and enlightened,
yes,
right? He had reached
yes,
those levels of consciousness that we're talking about and was able
yes.
to share that from that
Yeah.
place, right?
He was an embodied form who lived from
Yeah.
his heart and
Yeah.
lived with love.
He
And
did.
that, I
Yeah.
feel, is what it means to wake up in the world today,
Yes.
is to
Yeah.
find self-love, self-compassion,
Yes.
self-worth, and to be able to move from that place
Yep.
in the world to see it
Mhm.
in others. So fast forward, my life actually accelerated very quickly, met my new partner,
Mhm.
started teaching yoga, ran teacher training programs. I still run teacher training programs, and they're like personal development programs disguised as yoga, is what I say. And um, and then in 2013, I was running 4 yoga studios. I own 4 yoga studios, running teacher training program, doing retreats, teaching on stages, and
Yeah.
slowly, through the decisions that I take full responsibility for, the studio started to close. I was unable to keep them open. And because so much of my life through poor decisions was attached to the studio, I had to go through a bankruptcy.
Right.
I lost everything: my home, my vehicles, my retirement income, my businesses, and then my investment properties. So everything that I'd set myself up for in my life was gone.
Mm.
And that took me to a place that of shame that I had not yet
Yeah.
experienced. And
Yeah.
in my talk, I don't want to give up too much because I want you guys to go watch it on
Mhm.
Speaker Slam. In my talk, I talk about that being like that. If shame was a prison, this was the cell that was like in the basement in the dark,
Yeah.
with the term bankruptcy,
Yeah.
that I didn't know if I would get out alive. And I
Yeah.
really mean that literally.
Yeah.
And so it took all of my tools and my skills and my knowings from my teachings, and the teachings that I teach are from the tantric philosophy perspective.
Mhm.
Everything that I knew, I had to keep reminding myself and practicing. And that's what got me up in the day, that and my kids. Life is happening for me. At the time, it's like, really? Like, I just had such a hard time believing it, but I kept saying it. And I believed the biggest teaching for me was the teaching of Spanda, which is that life goes in ebbs and flows. So I was as low as I could get. And Lisa Nichols says, you get to fall down in life. This is going to happen. We come to our knees, but we get to decide whether we take real estate there and how long we want to be there. And
Mhm.
so every morning I got up, but every night I fell back down. And this went on for quite a long time. And slowly I started rebuilding myself. And a lot of the work that I embodied came through the teachings of Heart IQ, which is an organization in Amsterdam led by Christian Pankhurst. And if anybody wants to experience Christian's message, I interviewed him yesterday on a Facebook Live in my Realign to Thrive Facebook group, which is a public group. And the teachings are very tantric based teachings, but it's gentle.
Mm.
It's all about how do we return to recognizing and feeling the goodness that's inside us.
Yeah.
And from that remembrance, as I remembered, I am goodness, I am goodness, I am goodness. And as I say that, whoever's listening, I'm saying it to you as well. You are goodness. And I was able to come back to feel that, to find my worth, to start embracing the dark areas of my life. So I had many, we call them shadows. And I know that you talk about this. The shadows are the disowned parts of oneself that you don't want the world to see. And a lot of energy goes into protecting and hiding those shadows.
Oh yeah.
And your shadow could be the shadow of anger. Like I wasn't allowed to express anger. And when I finally went to Amsterdam, I had to go to Amsterdam to touch my anger and let it out. What came out when I released my anger in a very contained, safe environment where it was received with love and celebration, I literally was like stunned. And then from there, it's like I unplugged something in me that was so deep. My nervous system was so kinked and tight that I unplugged it. And from there came passion, clarity, And recently, what I really feel strongly is a complete surrender.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've moved very recently. I've also had some trauma come through this past like 8, 10 months with COVID, with the loss of my current relationship, loss of my father. My daughter moved across the country. My cat died, like tons of grief. And what I found myself having is an invitation, because it's an invitation, because I made the conscious choice to surrender to my grief.
Mm-hmm.
And my grief didn't come with any shame. I realized that the shame, it's gone. I literally took it out. The grief was very, very deep though.
Yeah.
And instead of judging it, numbing it,
Mm-hmm.
putting a time limit on it,
Yeah.
I went into it.
Yeah.
And I went into it and I gave it the love that it needed.
Yeah.
And on the other side of grief, when it, and I'm not saying it's all out, but for now I'm good. On the other side comes a yearning and a longing for, to express my heart and my love and my light in the world and to make a difference, and the clarity that comes with that. So that's where I am now, where I have, through the deep work that I've done, and it is really deep work, it's confrontational work. Most people aren't going to want to go and look at their shadows because, like, they
Yeah.
spent
Very
their
few.
lifetime
People.
avoiding them.
Yeah.
And I have
Yeah.
a shadow of a politician too. I have what's called a politician shadow,
Right.
where I can literally like put on a really good front,
Yeah.
and I can like, it's also, it's known as the ice queen, and I was actually once called an ice queen, and
Yeah.
it now makes me shrivel up, but that's what I needed at the time to protect myself.
I can see that.
And that quality is something that I can look back now and say, thank you for helping me to get through those really difficult times of my life where I didn't have capacity any other way.
Oh
So
yeah.
I don't judge. I
Yeah.
I I thank. I'm in gratitude
Yeah.
for all of the experiences in my life and how I've navigated them.
I love it. There's, oh my gosh, there's so much in here, in terms of like that shame piece and the grief and all of that. And I think, thank you for sharing your story, first of all. I appreciate
Mhm.
that. And I know that a lot of people will resonate with pieces of it, right? Especially like, the one of the most powerful things that you said in there, um, was how you thanked the person who assaulted you. And, it's so fascinating because it's like, there's that identification almost there with the perpetrator, right? And I just find that really fascinating that that was your reaction, and not surprising based
Mhm.
on how, like, the experiences that you had that put you in that state of that fight or flight, that survival, right? And I think when we experience, like deep abuse or whatever it is when we're younger, right? It's like any kind of attention is attention. And there's a part of us that knows, obviously, that's not healthy attention. But it's like when you're starved of something healthy, even the unhealthy seems, oh, thank you for giving me that something. And I remember like feeling that way around my abusers when I was younger, like being grateful for it in some sort of way. And it's like, wow, like now that wouldn't even cross my radar at all.
Mm.
But there was a time where I was like, when I was younger and in an abusive relationship for over 10 years, I was grateful that, there was a roof over my head at least.
Mm.
Right. And it was
Yeah.
like, I wasn't eating, I had no food, they were taking all my money, they were abusing me in so many ways. Like, it was a really awful, toxic situation. But I was so grateful that I had a roof over my head and I wasn't living in the streets. Right. So
Yeah.
it's so fascinating how, like, we can even go from having that as a baseline, right, to then saying, no, you know what, I am here for more love, and I am here to receive more, because we all are. At the end of the day, we're all these light beings like
Yeah.
Jesus. We are all Jesus. We have the
We are.
capacity
We are all God
for that.
realization. And, Rumi says, our task is not to see, the Sufi poet Rumi, our task is not to seek for love, but to seek for all the barriers that we've placed against it.
Yeah, exactly. And
And
that's what it all is. It's like
yeah,
undoing layer after
yeah,
layer after layer so that we can just shine our heart out
yeah.
like so wide
And
and
it's a
know
journey.
it's a journey, and know that we're going to get hurt in that. Know that it's not always, you experience something so profound in terms of that collapse. Like Kali really showed up in your life there. And she was just
Yes.
like, ching, 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 you don't need any of these material things anymore.
Yeah,
And
Kali and Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the goddess
yeah,
of beauty and abundance. And
yeah,
I was able to see beauty in my grief. So
yeah,
I was able to literally witness my grief and feel good feeling bad because I knew it's what
right,
needed to come up. And I want to clarify, at the time that the abuses were happening to me, there wasn't a part of me at all that felt grateful or that welcomed it. Like I knew it felt wrong. It felt dirty. It felt unhealthy.
right,
I wanted to run away. I wanted to shower. I wanted to
yeah,
hide. It's the gratitude comes, not the gratitude, the forgiveness comes now. The gratitude comes for the way that I have used all of the experiences in my life to help me to create and cultivate resilience and strength and patience and understanding and tolerance. And I know that hurt people hurt people.
yeah,
And when I know that, I can forgive. And forgiveness is never about releasing the charge from the other person. It's about releasing the pain in one's own heart.
yeah,
So forgiveness became a very powerful practice for me with my father. And I'm so grateful that I did, because I felt complete when he died. I felt like
yeah,
there was nothing left more to do. Like in our relationship, I felt really good and really loving of him and for
yeah,
him.
yeah,
And I do believe that when we recognize that hurt people, it doesn't mean that you, please, if for listeners, you don't ever stay in a situation that is hurting you.
yeah,
There's discernment that comes with awareness and awakening and wanting to love, but you can't change other people. You can only change yourself, your responses, your reactions, and take care of yourself.
yeah,
And then when you're out of the situation, when there's a little bit of space and time,
yeah,
you can have a different perspective.
yeah,
But I want to be really careful that we don't. One of the things I'm really clear when I speak is that we don't want to engage in what I call the spiritual bypass, which is it was okay, hurt people, and it's, I forgive right away. That may not be the time to do it. You may have to do more healing
oh
for
yeah,
that to happen. And
yeah,
what happens if we don't do that is we don't want to feel. And the last 10, 15 years of my life has been about going into the feels,
yeah,
holding the places for the feels, giving them love, acceptance, tolerance, patience, space to be what they are. And in that moment, I can allow myself to feel others more, but I'm really clear about what's mine, what's the other.
yeah,
But I also recognize that you are me cleverly disguised as you.
yeah.
And that's the God realization. I can see that in you and I can feel it in
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I appreciate you getting specific on that gratitude piece and the forgiveness piece, because that's really important. And if you are in a situation that is not healthy in whatever way, shape, or form, it is important to have that discernment. It isn't about like, yes, I am all love and you can treat me however you want. That is not at all what I was saying. And
Yeah.
just to be clear on that,
Yeah.
and it is that time and space, that separation, that allows you to get to that place
Yeah.
of that um forgiveness, because it is more for ourselves than it
Yeah.
is really for
Yeah.
excusing the behavior or
Yeah.
anything like that, or
Yeah.
staying and tolerating the behavior,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
um
And we have some amazing teachers in the world, like spiritual teachers and guides who have taught us how to do that, who have
yeah,
gone through horrific things in their life, like much worse than anything I've gone. And not that I
yeah,
want to diminish what I've gone through,
yeah,
and have been able to come up for forgiveness. So I look
oh
to
yeah,
these people as teachers of how I want to be in the world and as
yeah,
a reminder. And it's a practice.
it is,
It's a daily practice
it is, it
because I
is.
catch myself. I catch myself going back to what I call victim consciousness.
Yep.
And it's like, nope, that's not who I want to be. And the catching of myself, that's a moment that I say I go to sleep.
Yep.
Those are the times that I get to reawaken.
Yeah.
But it may not happen right away because I'm human.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. um and just to your point, like that is what this podcast, this container is for, because I'm always so fascinated by the people who had really traumatic things happen to them, at some point in their lives, and how they navigated that, got out of the victim, got out of the fight or flight and the survival and all of those pieces, into something that is more heart opening and, forgiveness and all the rest of it. Right. So there's a few people on this podcast that are sharing their story in that kind of way. And I'm just like, wow, like what you experience, like it's just so amazing to me to see how they've evolved through it. And they're not sitting in some sort of blame or victim or reliving it on a daily basis, because I think that's the most important thing that we can do is go through that journey if we possibly can, if that's part of this incarnation for us in this lifetime. And I know for
Yeah.
me, I remember when I was little, like I was always looking, like you mentioned at the beginning, that you thought that was like, there was a normal, I don't know if you use that word, but
I
it
did.
was like,
Yeah.
I didn't know anything different. Like, okay, this is what happens.
Yeah.
And I had a very different experience because it was like, this is not normal. I remember saying that constantly.
Mm.
This is not normal. This is not normal. And I would constantly say that to my mother. I'm like, why are you doing this? This is not normal. And
Mm.
that was, my kind of thing was like, I've always felt this separation and this duality of what was going on. And it was like,
Mm.
I don't want to be part of this. This doesn't feel natural to me. It doesn't feel normal to me or whatever. But even with that, the programming still got there. And so
Mhm.
it was like way until my like mid 30s, early 40s before I started to really wake up and have that discernment and say, no, that is not acceptable to me anymore to live in that fight or flight, to allow those kinds of people in my life and to have that kind of treatment on myself. And now I'm going to, do, like you said, do that inner work
Mhm.
of, aligning myself to my purpose and my soul and why I'm here. And that sounds like that's exactly what your journey has got you to. And that level of awareness really allowed you to have this last incident of your life. It's like, I find that a lot of people who are on a deep spiritual journey have because I have a breakdown of the 3D, of the material world. There's something, and it can be quite destructive, but I think it's there to help us really be humble
Mhm.
and to have that humility element of it, right? Because we know that it's not about chasing after the money or chasing after the accolades or all of the material things. It's deeper than that. It's wider than that, right?
Mhm.
And I wish it didn't happen, but I do find that it does happen, like where there is that destruction of the 3D in
Well, I
order
have a
for,
I have an expression that says, "Grace loves you so much she'll rattle you to wake you up."
right.
Right? I
Yeah.
needed wake ups. I
Yeah.
needed wake
Yeah.
ups.
Yeah.
And so I have a power quote that I use that says, "Our experiences do not define us.
Mhm.
Our experiences refine us and have the potential to catapult us to our deepest purpose."
Yeah.
That's what happened in 2013 for me.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening again right now. And the
Yeah.
expansion in my business, in my purpose, in my mission,
Mhm.
in my reach has been unbelievable since those moments of surrender. So if life is like, I'm going to use the word fine, and for those who can't see, I'm using quotation
Sure.
marks. If life is fine, there's no need to change, right?
Right.
And that was me up until my mid 30s, early 30s. Life was fine.
Fine.
Well,
Yeah.
Aerosmith has a song called Fine. And in the inside of their cover, for those of you who are a little bit younger, Aerosmith is a band in the 80s. The inside of their cover defines the word fine as fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. That's what fine stands for.
I
And
love
I
it.
teach my clients and my students this, that if you're fine,
Yeah.
because we're really conditioned to be
Oh yeah.
fine,
I'm fine. I'm
I'm fine.
fine.
I teach them, you own it. You own it. If you're
Yeah.
fine, you make sure you know what that stands for, because I want to know how you really are.
Yeah.
I want you to feel inside how you
Yeah.
really are, because we're
Yeah.
so disconnected
Yeah.
from our physical state that
Yeah.
we don't even know how we're doing.
Yeah.
Or we get stuck in not wanting to feel, which we call depression,
Yeah.
because the fear of feeling, and I know this because I was afraid to feel. I was afraid if I turned on the faucet of grief
Yeah.
back in like, I don't know, 2000. 2005-ish. If I turned on the faucet of grief, I would cry for 7 years. Like I thought I had that much to come out of me.
Yeah.
So I was afraid to touch it. And now
Right.
it's so, I know it's hard for people who are in the fear of it. But it's such a beautiful experience to be able to go
Yeah.
in towards the various bodily sensations, and sensations is the language of the body. Where do you feel tight, open, constricted, tingly, warm, cool, whatever the sensation is, and just be there.
Mhm.
And the research shows that in 90 seconds, that sensation will start to morph into something different.
Yeah.
And so we actually have the capacity to alter our biochemistry really, really quickly.
We do.
And that's why meditation is so good, because we get to sit with what is.
Yeah.
But gosh, when I started meditation, every time I sat, I wanted to vomit. I thought there was
Yeah.
something wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my nervous system kinked, saying
Yeah.
it wants to open up and literally vomit out
Oh,
all
yeah.
the stuck energetic emotional stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yes.
it's a beautiful opportunity, and I think there are a lot of people waking up in the world today
Oh, yeah.
that are doing some work. Yeah, deep
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And I remember now that vomity feeling. I haven't had that for a really long time, but I remember that vomity feeling as things were coming up. It was like, oh, I want to throw up.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a really good indicator as well. In terms of like that body sensation and the body feeling. And I'm very big on all of this as well, like moving your body to move the energy through, right? But like the
Mhm.
sitting as well in it so that you can feel it. And we are so used to, okay, we'll just pick up the phone and scroll, or numbing out in some sort of way, shape, or form. And even like we said at the beginning, using something healthy as a way to numb out, right? Like using meditation or something like that. And so what we're talking about is, really truly being with that uncomfortable sensation. So one of the things that with my clients that I'll do is, if they're experiencing like a physical sensation, like they're too hot, they're having a hot flash, they're too hot, they're too cold, they're too something, right? I'll vipassana it for them, and I'll be like, okay, let's just sit in that sensation for a couple of minutes.
Mhm.
And they're like, but I'm having a hot flash, or I'm so hot, or I'm so cold. And it's like, good, let's feel that. Because if they can sit through that and get out of the panicky sensation that comes with that I'm too hot, I'm too cold, or whatever, it's no different than going through the emotion, right? It's like, it's kind of like what's the word I'm looking for, like
It's witnessing with non-attachment to what is.
what is
Right.
exactly.
And so loving
Yeah.
loving what is, even
Yeah.
if it's uncomfortable, because
Yeah.
nobody said that life was guaranteed to be comfortable.
No.
Somehow we've gotten this imprint that life is supposed to be joyful, and let me not use joyful, because for me joy is the umbrella under which all emotional states fall. Life is supposed to be easy and happy all the time. And then what happens when it's not? And we don't have imprints of what to do when it's not. We don't have
Yeah.
imprints of how do we release the
We can
tension?
see it.
How do we release the tension so we can
Yeah.
be in relationship and communicate our truth? Because a
Yeah.
lot of what I do is around nonviolent communication
Yeah.
and conscious communication, whether it's in relationships, in the business place, whatever,
Yeah.
so that we can be authentic and we can share our withholds and our longings and our needs in a way that's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking we should workshop this.
Yes, yes. I do have some workshops put together, but this
Yeah.
is absolutely
Yeah.
essential.
Yeah.
I do have a course that I'll be launching shortly, and it's to help people that are either they've gone the wealth. You had a podcast, a guest on this early last week who used the term the wealth journey
Yeah.
versus the self-worth journey, the
Yeah.
wealth journey versus the self-worth
Yeah.
journey.
That was
So
Robin.
I very much help people to tap into their self-worth
Self-worth. Yeah.
and to find
Yeah.
gratitude and acceptance for their life, to be able to then start making changes. Because until you can accept what is, you're just going to move to a different place. And whether it's a relationship,
Yeah. Wherever you
same
go, there
person,
you
different hair
are.
color.
Yeah.
If it's a
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
same, different
Oh, yeah.
workplace,
Yeah.
but same problems, right?
Yeah.
So we need to do our own inner work.
Yeah.
And then the program is also for people who have this longing to create an impact in the world. So mostly coaches. and they're stuck in their doubt. They're stuck in their limiting beliefs. They take one step forward and three steps back, and they have a hard time trusting in the unfolding of the process. And part of it is people want instant gratification.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this work for 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's not like overnight. It's
It's not
15
overnight.
years of
Yeah.
being really committed. And the work, I mean, my personal work for 25 years, but the work of bringing it out into the world,
Yeah.
it took me 10 years of my own personal
Yeah.
exploration, evolution, revolution to be able to bring it into the world.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Because we don't get that memo right away that
Yeah.
we're here to share this too, and
Yeah.
how and all that.
Yeah. And we're here to like just relax a little bit. I feel like
Yeah.
everybody's so wound up and
Yep.
tense and tight. And
Yep.
I get it. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today.
Yep.
I don't want anyone to bypass that. I get it.
Yep.
I get it.
Yep.
And then at the end of the day, how do you want to go to sleep, and how do you want to wake up, and how do you want to connect with your kids, and how do you want to connect with your partner? We have
Yep.
choices.
We do.
We have
We
choices.
do.
And so we
Yeah.
have to become aware. We have to wake up. We have to recognize when the tension is creeping in, and then figure out what we can do with it.
Yeah. I love that. Um, let's shift gears a little bit here and talk about the shame, but I want to talk about the grief too. Like I've talked about this a lot over the last year about so where are we right now? We are January 2021. It is still January, right?
It sure is.
I don't even know what day it is.
I know it's Groundhog Day. It's just
It's
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog
Just
Day.
call it
I was
Groundhog
with
Day.
somebody yesterday and he's like, so today's Wednesday. And he was totally convinced. And it was like,
Oh,
I'm like, no, 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 it's Monday. And he's like, no,
yeah.
no, it's Wednesday. I'm like, no. And he was like, no, it's Wednesday. I'm like, no,
I know.
darling.
I get that too.
Anyway, so I've been talking a lot about the grief because that is what we're experiencing over and over and over and over again, right? At a collective level, right? The
Yes.
lockdowns and the closure of businesses and like not being with people and even the blockage of our faces and the
Yeah.
blockage of our breath,
Yeah.
all of that is
Yeah.
just like,
And the
wow.
loss of loved ones,
And
right?
yeah, of course, the loss of
Yeah.
loved ones. I mean, yes, there has been so much loss in 2020, not even COVID related,
Mm-hmm.
right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have in my life have passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible. And I know it's happening all over the world, right? And I mean, it happens all the time anyway, but now it's like really brought to our awareness and consciousness because we are doing nothing else at the moment, really. We're not commuting that much anymore. We're not going out to restaurants. We're not vacationing. We're not partying. We're not doing all that stuff anymore, right? So there's so much more time to be conscious and with ourselves. And you and I
And
are
the
like,
alternative is people are taking this time to numb out more, right? So
no,
we have the
exactly. Yes,
choices. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I was getting there with that. So there are the two prongs, and
Yeah.
there are so many people waking up and understanding like this is the time for me to really start to go within and decide how do I want to live my life if when things go quote unquote back to normal, which I don't know what that's going to look like. But and then like you said, there's the other sect that but I think that what's happening is just going to be such a pressure cooker that people are just going to have no choice but to go within and no choice but to do this work because that's where we're heading as a collective into this age of Aquarius where we're into something that's more expansive and love forward, rather than how we've been working over the last several hundred years, right?
We have a chance right now for a reset.
We do.
We have a chance for a reset. And my hope is that people, I have something called the 3 C's. Take a chance. Make a choice to take a chance to create a change.
Right.
This is now.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to wait until we're out of this.
Yeah, no, you can
to
do
live
it right
life differently. And living life differently sometimes just means changing your perspective.
Yeah.
I really feel the power of breath work and meditation, stilling the mind and moving the body. All essential practices.
You've got to do it all. Yeah. So let's just for the remaining little bit of time that we've got left, just have like a conversation around the shame and around the grief, right? Because I mean, they're those are two different topics. But there is a lot of grieving that is taking place, and there could be some shame that people are feeling around, things not working out anymore the way they were, right? So there's a lot of relationships, a lot of marriages, a lot of that's happening, right? That's breaking down. And for some people, it's expanding and getting even better, right? I've heard both stories, right?
Or
And there's
both are happening simultaneously for the same person.
yeah, right. But there could be some shame around, oh my God, like my
Yeah.
marriage is ending, my relationship is ending, or shame around my business isn't doing well, right? Like I'm not making the kind of money that I was making before or whatever, right? Like I think there's a lot of shame also in this grief where everybody's at right now. And from my experience, like shame has come up a lot for me in the last couple of weeks in terms of where do I feel it and where does it come in for me. And I was recognizing that when I was younger, there was a lot of shame around how my mother was. And it was like, it just imprinted on me. And it was like, I was so embarrassed at how she was behaving that it was like a stank on me that I was carrying around. And I didn't even realize that there was a part of me in my shadow that we talked about before that was still carrying that shame. And it was being imprinted on one area of my life. And when I had that recognition and that realization, like, holy shit, I've been like pouring shame on this particular area of my life. And it was literally the only area of my life that wasn't in flow. And I'm like, wow. So I'd want to hear what you have to say about shame and like how one can navigate that, because the grief is the grief, right? Like we've got like those stages of grief that and that's where that's sitting in it, feeling it, having compassion for ourselves around it, talking about it, doing the practices that we talked about, the meditation and the breath work and movement and things like that, right? Reaching out for help, getting the right kind of help around the grieving process. But also we get to address the shame as well. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yes, thank you. So from the perspective of having done several years of like cognitive behavioral therapy, that kind of talking therapy, that to me didn't.
Yeah. I just said thought,
Talk.
Yeah.
To me, that is a surface level of healing.
Yeah.
It's, change your thoughts, change your life, this manifestation generation that we're in, that you just get to believe it and it will come true.
Yeah.
I believe that we are ready for the next level.
Yeah.
And the next level is what Reverend Michael Beckwith calls the life is happening through me, not just for me, but through me.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the conscious, taking it into unconscious, where we're awake and present all the time. As long as we're running shame, we're going to be hiding.
Yeah.
And so I feel that the remedy, the medicine for shame is to normalize it. We need to have these conversations.
Yes.
I have siblings that will never talk about what I've talked about. And if they knew what I was talking about, they would be horrified that I've disclosed our childhood, secrets.
Yeah. Right.
I believe that the remedy for shame is to normalize it. So we need to have these conversations so people know you're okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And to be able to recognize, there are people, you talked about people having shame right now over businesses and relationships and stuff. People are putting shame on themselves because they didn't cook dinner.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like little things.
Yeah.
It's like we have to let ourselves off the hook. These are not normal times, first of all. So whatever you do right now, I really believe you're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
Whoever's listening to this, my heart goes out to you. My hat goes off to you. I bow to you. You're doing the best you can. And the fact that you even choose to listen to this tells me that you're on an awakened path. So good on you.
Yeah.
We also carry shame around grief.
Yeah.
And grief is such an interesting topic in our society because we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. No, we
want
don't.
to just like brush our hands and let it go. So much so that businesses give 2 days for people to grieve the loss of a loved one.
I know.
And no days to grieve relationship losses.
Right.
And so we're just supposed to go on. So what happens with that energy, with that emotion?
There's a hurrying up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a hurrying up about it. It's like, get over it, get over it. Stop feeling sad, like that you've experienced this loss. Like, I agree with you 100% on that. I think that's a very important point, is the rushing through the grieving process and not acknowledging it.
And so
Right?
then people they feel shame because they feel like, well,
Yeah.
there's
I
something
should
wrong
be
with
over
me.
this
Why
by now.
can't I move forward? I'm
Yeah.
collapsed in bed again.
Should be.
I'm so sad. I'm crying.
Yeah.
It's normal. Grief needs to be expressed. And when we hold it in, we create
Yeah.
more blocks or kinks in our nervous system,
Yeah.
and we then hold it in as shame.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, just go out and cry all the time. But let me tell
Yeah.
you, in September, when I started going out again in public and seeing people and they said, "How are you?"
Yeah.
My response was often, "I'm not so great." And I'd start to cry.
Yeah.
I
Right.
didn't say I'm fine
Yeah.
with a smile on my face.
Yeah.
I
You're
said,
fine.
I'm fine, which
You're
means I'm not
fine.
doing okay.
Yeah.
I'm not doing okay.
Yeah.
And it's not that I needed anyone to do anything
No.
for me, because I do have tools and support people.
Yep.
I was just letting them know where I'm at. And this is
Yeah.
part of the
Yes.
normalizing
Yes.
our
Yeah.
emotional ranges.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we limit ourselves and we think we're only supposed to show up in the world when we're happy. But that's a mask.
It is.
And it's a mask that until we're willing to take it off,
Yeah.
we can't touch the shame. We can't touch the grief because we're going to make ourselves wrong in doing
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. 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 The word that was coming up while you were saying that is like, I should be over this by now. I
Oh,
shouldn't be feeling,
yeah.
shouldn't. If that word is coming up, that is, that's not truth. That
I
is
tell my clients,
society's expectations
why are you shooting all
all
over
over
yourself?
yourself. Yeah. Stop
Yeah.
shitting all over yourself.
Stop
Right.
shitting all over
Stop
yourself.
shitting all over yourself. Yeah. Because yes, I love everything that you're saying. Like, me too. Like walking around the streets, if I'm feeling sad and I'm crying, I'm crying. I'm just crying. I don't care. Whereas a long time ago, or once upon a time, there's no way. It was
Mhm.
like stuff that down, like literally push it
Yeah.
down as
And
far
that
as
just
you can
creates armor,
go.
right? That's
Oh,
protective armor that gets
so
really
much.
tight.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Ugh. I can
Yeah.
feel that the difference, like the way I don't know, I'm sure, well, I'm not going to assume anything, but for my body, how it feel, I just feel so light and so
Yeah.
free and
Yeah.
so, like
Yeah.
orgasmic.
Yeah.
Literally, I feel like I'm a walking orgasm 24/7,
Yeah.
even when I'm crying,
Yeah.
even when I'm in the shoulds,
Yeah.
even when I'm feeling that shame or that grief or whatever the emotion is, because I allow it to roll through, roll through,
Mhm.
roll through. Whereas before, that sensation of that orgasmic sensation couldn't be accessed because there was that blockage
Yeah.
of stuffing that emotion down,
Yeah.
swallowing it, swallow it, swallow it,
Yeah.
swallow your emotion. Oh God, it feels like when I feel that in my body, it's like all on my chest, and it is
Yeah.
like an anvil is
Yeah.
sitting there. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. And then people have this massive fear of speaking.
Yeah. Yeah,
A
because it's
big part of
blocked.
what I do is I help people to become clear with their message and to deliver it. I've been a communication consultant and
Right,
expert for 30 years.
right, right.
And the throat chakra, if we take it in yogic terms, the throat
Yeah.
chakra is
Mm,
always so incredibly tense and tight
yeah.
that people cannot express themselves. Again, I'm
Yeah.
going to come down to the imprints that we've had, the conditionings that we've had. Nobody has taught us how to do this work. And
No.
so what happens is we carry on the teachings
Right.
that aren't not even just from our parents, but generational from
Yeah.
their parents and their parents and their
Society.
parents.
Yeah.
So at some point, I made a decision that, you know what? I don't want to pass this on to my kids.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my work so they don't have to do
Yeah.
it in 30 years.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we get to wake up and take responsibility for ourselves and for our lives. And in that case, there's no fingers pointing.
Yeah.
We do the forgiveness work so we don't have to point fingers. We
Yep.
take responsibility. We show up.
Yeah.
I take responsibility. I show up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I mess up, because I do,
Yeah.
take responsibility and I show up. It's
Yeah.
just like rinse,
Yeah.
rinse,
Just
repeat,
repeat.
and
Yeah.
keep my heart open. And every time I feel it closed, it's an
Yeah.
indicator that there's something that needs to heal inside me.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
a little girl in there that's
Yeah.
feeling a wound,
Yeah.
and I need to ask her, what does she need? And I
Yeah.
go on a journey with her.
I
And I
love
take
that.
my clients on journeys too. So I
Yeah.
know this might sound a little woo woo to some people. I don't expect you to go on a journey with your little girl or little boy by yourself if you haven't been coached in doing this. I do this as part of my coaching. And it's part of what I continually need to do. And I imagine I will till the day I die, because I
Oh,
don't ever want to lose my connection to
no.
those parts of myself that want to be seen, heard, acknowledged.
Yeah. 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 And when they're not, that's shadow.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And that's the
Mhm.
part that runs the show. And you're just like,
Yeah.
why is my life completely destroying, like being like, shipped around like
Yeah.
without, and it's like, oh,
Do you
because
know what
that's
your
part
main
of me.
shadow is? Do you know what your primary shadow is?
Yeah, it's victim. I have
Yeah.
like a lot of victim, perpetrator, savior. Not so much on the perpetrator side, but definitely victim. Her name's Vicky. She comes up and she's just like, I'm here to like just be seen. And I work with her, she's I call it the shadette, once you get to
Mhm.
this point, it's like your shadette, right? So
Mhm.
what does Vicky need today in order to feel satiated and
Yeah.
seen and heard and all of
Yeah.
that? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And how do you
definitely as soon
integrate
as
her?
yeah, excuse me, as soon as I notice like, oh, I'm in victim, or I'm trying to
Mm.
save, or I want to be saved, that's
Mhm.
when I'm like, okay, here we go. We're in some
Mm.
shadow pieces here. That's all good.
Yeah.
What needs to be seen, or sometimes it's literally just the old tape being played. It's not even something
Yeah.
that needs to be seen. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, activate,
Mhm.
and it's like, I do not need to activate that tape today. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. So
Yeah.
for making yourself known that there's still a little piece of you there, I think
I
that
love
the
this
one,
conversation. And
yeah,
as I say, I love this conversation because you are putting yourself out there just like I put myself out there as showing all of our perfect imperfections. That
yes,
there are so many spiritual teachers, leaders, guides, coaches out there who who project an image of perfection. Run.
yeah, oh yeah, I
Run
did
from
like
anybody who says they've got it all together.
that.
You want someone who's real and authentic,
Yeah,
who can walk the walk
yes,
with you
yes,
and
yeah,
know that you are in a safe place
yeah.
and it's not
Yeah,
wearing a mask. Yeah.
I agree with you. Let's end on that point because we're both
Mhm.
coaches, we're both spiritual guides, we're both passionate about this work,
Mhm.
and it can really help people because we've been there, but we walk our talk, right? Like it's one thing. The one thing that concerns me the most about this industry, and this is a whole other podcast, but is that you know there's that cognitive understanding of things like what you talked about, right? There's the book knowledge, there's the, oh,
Mhm.
I went to a retreat, or I did this, or I did that, which is totally fine. Everybody is where they're at, and that person is going to take people up to, like, you can only go as deep as what you've gone with
Mhm.
people, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so even on my own journey over the last 10 years of doing this, it's like, I wasn't where I am today when I started. And so I could only take people so far into their consciousness, so far into their spirituality. But
Mhm.
now you and I have such depth with it because we do this work on ourselves, for ourselves, every moment of every day.
Mhm.
It's not something that, like, we flip back into unconscious and then we go to a retreat and then now we're back into, like, it's all the time, every day. It's
Yeah.
it's who we are, it's how we show up, right?
Yeah.
And that depth is um really what can allow people to go to that depth. I call it spelunking, right? It's like cave diving. You can
Mm.
go into those depths, and you mentioned like having that safe container,
Mhm.
because you know what that depth looks like. You know what the deep dark looks like. You know what it looks like when somebody is facing that shadow piece
Mhm.
and all they want to do is run away from it, right? And you can hold that space, and you can hold that container for that person and just be
Mhm.
like, it's all right, babe, I've got you,
Mhm.
like, keep going, keep going. And the person on the other end knows at a deep intuitive level that you've got them. And
Mhm.
so it allows them to be able to go deeper within. So I just want to thank you for doing this work. I want to thank you for showing up. I want to thank you for being on this podcast. I'm feeling a couple other episodes here,
I know
possibly.
we could go on for we could do a whole season, I think, on
That's I know. I
so
have
many
I have
different
all these
topics.
series booked with people now because
Yeah.
it's like, ooh, we should talk about that on the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I want to really thank you for showing up as you do and sharing as you have, and mentioning Speaker Slam and your talk around shame for that, because like you said, it needs to be normalized.
Mhm.
It really
Mhm.
does.
Yes.
We need to normalize these deeper sensations and deeper feelings, or else we're just going to continue being a society of like that numbs out, and we're not connected, and like it's terrifying. That's terrifying to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the risks of that increasing are greater now.
Yeah.
greater now
Yeah.
than they were 10 months ago,
Oh, for sure.
because
Because
we're
we're all
creating
isolated.
new habits where we're very
Yeah.
disconnected.
Yep.
And
Yeah. That
for
terrifying.
anybody who's a parent, like I know I'm watching my son who's
Yeah.
14 and how he's navigating this isolation
Yeah.
period, social isolation. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's we have a responsibility. We
Yeah.
have to show up.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me on, and thank you for this work. And I love the dirt and the divine, and
Mhm.
I see divine in the dirt,
Yeah.
which is what's amazing about the
Yeah.
name of your podcast. And
Yeah.
I love these conversations, and I would love to come back. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Me too. So thank you so much. And thank you to you, dear listener or watcher of this particular episode. I'm sure that you have also found it to be very enlightening and stimulating as well in terms of what's possible for us in our journey into our soul and into our shadow and into all of these integrated pieces of us. I believe that that would be like integration is probably the best word to describe what we were talking about here.
And if you
And
feel uncomfortable, I say, yay,
yeah, exactly.
yay.
It's like, yay.
We need to go into those places of discomfort
Yeah.
and then hold compassion for it and ask yourself, what does this need?
Yeah.
That's when you know you're moving. You're moving the needle
Yes.
on the thermostat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. If you have any questions for myself or for Diana, or if you want to take your journey a little bit deeper or a lot deeper, you'll have an opportunity to do so through the show notes. Diana, where can people find you?
So my website is dianalockett.com.
Okay.
Facebook, Diana Lockett. And then I have a Facebook group that I put all my coaching content, and I do regular interviews. It's called Realign to Thrive, which is my product name. My program is Realign to Thrive. And so the Facebook group is Realign to Thrive. And I will be hosting, I started yesterday for this year, Realign to Thrive with Facebook Live. So they're interviews with heart-centered leaders around the world. My first interview yesterday was with one of my heart coaches. So for anybody who hasn't done coaching, I have 4 coaches.
Mhm.
Get into coaching. Everybody needs a coach. I
Everybody
apparently need
needs a coach.
4.
Yeah.
One of them is my heart coach, and his name is Christian Pankhurst. And I want to plug his work is called Heart IQ at heartiq.org. If you go on my Facebook page, Realign to Thrive, you'll see the interview. And Christian is running a 90-day program. I'm one of the coaches. It's based out of Amsterdam, and it is helping people to come into heart-centered communication.
I
It's
love it.
fantastic and it's essential. And I would love to see you all on that program.
I love it. I love it. Perfect. Okay. Well, we'll put a link for that in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Diana. And thank you to you, dear listener and dear watcher, for being here. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for watching this or listening to this episode of The Dirt and the Divine. Thank you for being here and being such a loyal supporter and fan. Please make sure that you subscribe and you share with people who you think could really, really, really benefit from this work. And if you are looking to go deeper into your own journey on any of the topics that Diana and I talked about today, I would like to invite you into having a conversation with me to see whether or not us working together would be a good fit for you at this time in your journey. I have 3 programs that I use in order to walk people through their own spiritual, emotional, physical awakening so that you can feel really aligned and have that heart opening experience for yourself where you do feel like you're orgasmic all of the time, and looking at these shadow pieces and looking at these and embracing and loving these shadow pieces, the shame, the guilt, all of those dirt, quote unquote, pieces that we talked about in today's episode. So if this is of interest to you, please make sure to reach out to me, and we'll see where that goes. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.